How's it going, everyone? It's time yet again for another controller review, and for today, we have the Tier 1 FPS for the PS3. This was released around a year after the launch of the PS4 and Xbox One, and if I recall correctly, I remember seeing this controller listed on numerous sites as being compatible for the PS4, which is false, as this product does not work with the PS4 whatsoever. But before we get into anything in detail, there's something I really want to point out on the packaging. On the side here, as soon as the camera focuses, it says, Pro Gamer button and stick layout provides an unfair advantage in competitive online play. So not only are they saying the people who are using this are basically cheating, they're also implying that because the analogs are offset like how they are on the Xbox, that the analogs are for pro gamers. I don't understand this logic at all. How does having an unsymmetrical analog placement make it for pros? Does that mean that anyone that uses on-set analogs are just casual gamers? You know, I probably shouldn't be annoyed by the statement as I am, but still, it's such a really stupid selling point to claim that this is for pros. Anyway, let's move on to the actual review. To start this off, let's take a look at the controller itself. Well, the design is alright. It's similar to the Xbox controller, except a little bit bulkier. It's also extremely lightweight, which for me, I don't really care for. I like my controllers to have a little bit of weight to them, but that's not necessarily a negative point. It's just more of a personal preference. The front of the controller has a nice, smooth plastic feel to it, while the back is more texturized to help get a better grip. Also, if you couldn't already tell, the controller is wired. They don't have a wireless version for God knows what reason, so if you don't like wires, then I guess tough luck for you. As far as the buttons go, from the top here we have the triggers that are surprisingly fantastic. By far some of the best triggers I've ever used on a third-party controller so far. The shoulder buttons are alright as well, however there's one very annoying thing that both my fiance and I noticed while using this. Because of the way the controller is designed, the back here is pretty bulky, as I sort of mentioned earlier. So when you go to press the shoulder buttons, your middle fingers are all the way back here, which is very, very uncomfortable due to the fact you're stretching your pointer fingers much further than you would with either using a Sony or Microsoft controller. Sure, you could fix this problem by putting your fingers like this, but neither of us like that, and to be honest, I can't really say I know many people who do. The D-pad on this thing is also very nice. Again, by far the best I've used on a third-party controller. Oddly, the face buttons not only are much closer together than on both the PlayStation and Xbox, but they're also smaller as well. Now, why would they do this? Well, I can only assume it's so it's easier to press a couple buttons at once. I can't think of any other reason why. The Start, Select, Home, and Extra M button at the bottom here, I don't like at all. The reason why is because when you press them down, they go below the plastic shell on the controller. It's not like with the face buttons where you press them down, they rest a little bit above the plastic. I don't know, it just ends up getting really irritating after a while. Before I talk about the analogs, let's take a look at the major gimmick of this controller. Now, it doesn't have a turbo function or anything like that. However, along with the M button, there's an extra 2 large buttons on the back of this controller that you can map to whatever you want. Kind of like those scuff controllers that people spend a good amount of money for. I never really use the M button just because, well, it's more convenient to press the buttons on the back here instead. But hey, it's there if you need it, I guess. Along with remapping, you also have the option to program macro commands to any of the 3 buttons. What macro does is you can set up to, I believe, 5 commands at once to any one individual button, along with time delays. So say, for example, you're playing Call of Duty or whatever first-person shooter. If you absolutely wanted, you can map the right back button here to jump instantly and have a half-second delay to aim or God knows whatever else you would want it to do. It's an interesting concept. But me personally, I don't have a use for it. Not only that, but I don't know if there's even a demand for a feature like this. I guess you would have to tell me. So what I'm going to show you now is how to map a command into one of the back buttons. What you do is flip over the controller to see this light up grid here, along with a select and enter button. First, hold down the enter button to bring up the lights. There we go. Select once for remap. Hit enter. Use select to scroll down into the choices of the buttons you want to set up. We're going to go with the right one. And then hit enter again. Then use the select to scroll down to whatever action you want to assign the right button to. We're going to go with X. And you'll feel a strong vibration letting you know it's all set, and really that's all there is to it. Right, so now all that leaves is the analogs. They're concave and have a textured ring around the edges that's very nice. They're not stiff when you go to move them around, nor are they too loose, like with most third-party controllers. That being said, when it comes to its actual performance, well, they're definitely not the worst I've used so far. That award would go to the Nyko Core or the Snakebite. However, if I were to compare them with all of the controllers I've previously reviewed from best to worst, this one is hovering somewhere around the middle. The problem is when you go to look around or aim in first-person games, the sensitivity is way too touchy, and the transition from moving slow to fast is not smooth at all. So making precise movements that you would need in a first-person shooter is actually really difficult compared to if you were using the Sony DualShock. Like always, I'll show you an example of how the analogs are during gameplay with both this Tier 1 FPS controller and the Sony. Hopefully this translates well into footage, but when using the DualShock here, the turns are very smooth. When I slowly push the analogs to the left and right, you can tell that it's slowly getting faster as I turn. However, with the Tier 1, it's pretty choppy and there's not much fluidity at all. Pushing the analogs to the left and right, like I showed with the Sony, results in a more dramatic speed change that will definitely impact your performance when playing first-person shooters or whatever else that needs precise analog movements. A little while ago I did an experiment of my own to see just how much a typical third-party controller impacts a player's gameplay. If you're curious, then by all means check it out for yourself via the link in the outro or in the description below. Interestingly, I tested the Tier 1 out on other games and found that this controller works absolutely amazing for fighters and hack-and-slash games. Possibly because both the D-pad is great and the small face buttons make it easier to do button combinations and combos in general? Yeah, maybe. What I also did when playing games is instead of mapping square or X to the back buttons, I put R1 and L1 there instead so I didn't have to deal with the annoying stretching fingers problem I complained about earlier. It did take some getting used to, sure, but it's a million times more comfortable than using the shoulder buttons by themselves. So in conclusion, I can't say I recommend the Tier 1 controller as a good alternative to buying another DualShock, especially if you're planning to use this for first-person shooters, since after all, that's this product's target audience. Maybe if you have large hands and want to use this for fighting games or anything that doesn't require precise analog movements, then okay, I can see this being pretty decent. But for first-person shooters, it's simply not good. But even then, I don't know, because this controller costs $30, and a used DualShock is, I believe, somewhere around $45 at GameStop. Is it really worth not saving another $15 for a DualShock? I'm going to let you guys decide on that, but for me, I'm going to have to say no, which is disappointing, honestly, because I'm still trying to find that one third-party controller that performs as good as a DualShock, if not better. I actually had high hopes for this one, but oh well, who knows, maybe I should try out one of those tournament controllers or something next time.